Chapter 16. Someone Else's Memories, Asher, Philip Jack, Black to Calm, GES, Position Normal, Mordant Music. In 2009, an artist known as Asher released an album called Miniatures on the Sourdine label. The only information on the sleeve was the following terse statement, recorded in Somerville, Massachusetts, winter 2007. Rumors and mysteries proliferate in a data vacuum, and Miniatures puts the listener into a state of suspension and suspicion. What exactly are we listening to? Who made it? What does making it mean in this context? And what sense of recorded is being used? Let's consider the audio facts, such as they are. Even here there is veiling - all the tracks are covered in a fog of crackle. What we hear is mostly piano, although occasionally strings can also be detected. The piano is contemplative, reflective, exquisitely sad. The lugubrious tempo seems to literalize the notion of longing. The haze of the crackle and the quietness of the playing mean that you have to lean in to hear the music. Played on iPod headphones, it practically disappears into the background noise of the street. How were the tracks made? At least two theories circulated online. One, the closest there seems to be to any official story, maintains that the tracks on Miniatures were all short sections recorded by Asher from the radio and then digitally looped. If so, he should buy himself a radio with better reception. The other theory is that the piano pieces were played by Asher on poor quality tape, then subjected to further processes of digital distortion to give the impression that they are found sound objects. The track's unresolved status is not some dry conceptual riddle detracting from the experience of listening to them. Instead, the enigma actually heightens the music's fragile, fragmentary beauty, its uncanny intimacy. Miniatures was one of a number of records from the Yo-Ohs whose sound centered on crackle. Why should crackle resonate now? The first thing we can say is that crackle exposes a temporal pathology. It makes out-of-joint time audible. Crackle both invokes the past and marks out our distance from it, destroying the illusion that we are co-present with what we are hearing by reminding us we are listening to a recording. Crackle now calls up a whole disappeared regime of materiality, a tactile materiality, lost to us in an era where the sources of sound have retreated from sensory apprehension. Artists like Tricky, Basic Channel and Pulse started to foreground vinyl crackle at the very moment when records were becoming superseded. Back then, it was the CD that was making vinyl obsolete. Now, the MP3 can neither be seen nor touched, still less manipulated by the hand in the way that the vinyl record could be. The digital seems to promise nothing less than an escape from materiality itself, and the story of Willem Basinski's 2002 album Disintegration Loops, a recording of tapes that destroyed themselves in the very process of their transfer to digital, is a parable, almost too perfect, for the switch from the fragility of analog to the infinite replicability of digital. What we have lost, it can often seem, is the very possibility of loss. Digital archiving means that the fugitive evanescence that long ago used to characterize, for instance, the watching of television programs, seen once, and then only remembered, has disappeared. Indeed, it turns out that experiences which we thought were forever lost can, thanks to the likes of YouTube, not only be recovered, but endlessly repeated. Crackle, then, connotes the return of a certain sense of loss. At the same time, it is also the sign of a found, audio, object, the indication that we are in a scavenger space. That is why crackle is a stock in trade of someone like turntable artist Philip Jack. Jack's first record had appeared in 1999, but his work gained a new currency because of its convergence with what Burial and The Caretaker were doing. Jack had been inspired by hearing mixers like Walter Gibbons, Larry Levan and Grandmaster Flash in the 80s, but his montages reconceived DJing as the art of producing sonic phantasmagoria. Using dance-set turntables, FX units and records found in charity shops, Jack defamiliarizes the vinyl source material to the point of near abstraction. Occasionally, recognizable fragments, 60s rock, Mantovani-like light classical kitsch, thrillingly bob up out of the whooshing delirium stream. Jack began the extraordinary 2008 version of Gavin Bryars' The Sinking of the Titanic, which he performed in collaboration with Italian ensemble Alter Ego and Bryars himself, with nearly 14 minutes of crackle. In this audio fog, threatening objects loom, barely perceived. As we listen, we come to distrust our own hearing, begin to lose confidence in our ability to distinguish what is actually there from audio hallucinations. Ominous strings and a solitary bell produce an atmosphere of quiet foreboding, and the ensemble, at first indistinct shadows in a Turneresque squall, only gradually emerge from the cloud of crepitation. Here, as in Asher's miniatures, crackles suggests radio static. The sinking of the Titanic in fact prompted the first use of wireless in sea rescue. As Briers points out in his sleeve notes, Marconi had conceived of telegraphy as a spectral science. He became convinced that sounds once generated never die, they simply become fainter and fainter until we no longer perceive them. Marconi's hope was to develop sufficiently sensitive equipment, extraordinarily powerful and selective filters I suppose, to pick up and hear these past sounds. Ultimately, he hoped to be able to hear Christ delivering the Sermon on the Mount. Jack has referred to the sonic sources he uses as fragments of memory, triggering associations, but it is crucial that the memories are not necessarily his. The effect is sometimes like sifting through a box of slides, photographs and postcards from anonymous people, long gone. This same feeling of coming upon other people's orphaned memories could be heard in the 2009 album Circulations by GES, Gesellschaft zur Emanzipation des Samples / Society for the Emancipation of Sampling. There is some mystery about who is behind GES, but the project appears to be a front for genre-hopping dilettante Jan Jelinek, best known for his loop-finding jazz records, which constructed a version of minimal techno out of minuscule jazz samples. Jelinek has also produced micro house under the name Farben and Ambient as Graham. GES's idea was to take micro samples, loop and collage them, play them in public spaces, and record the results. Would the ordinary laws of copyright apply if music was sampled in these conditions? The tracks are like unsigned audio postcards, recorded sometimes in named places. Mount Ceremont and Hong Kong are mentioned in the track titles, sometimes in places we can only guess at, using the voices and background noises to orientate ourselves. Birds of Heracleon begins with distorted electronic pulses before being swept up by a backwards rush of very cinematic strings that sound like they might have come from a black and white film extolling the benefits of train travel. Orinoco, Bullerboo, Crossfade, is initially built from the violent juxtaposition of crazed bird noises with what could be a sample from some forgotten film noir or a highly strung melodrama, but it ends with echoes, and strange, abstract whistles. M. Skilf puts one in mind of the kind of alien piping noises you would hear in an Oliver Postgate animation or an early Cabaret Voltaire tape experiment, while Farnbullet and Farnbullet, in dub, recall a beanut on tennis game having a howl-like nervous breakdown. The random sounds, the passing conversations, make you feel like you are witnessing stray frames from a film no whole version of which exists anywhere. This sense that action is continuing beyond what we are hearing, together with the record's travelogue cosmopolitanism, remind me of nothing so much as the cold, dislocated beauty of Antonioni's The Passenger. The closing track, Schlaf, nach Einführung der Psychoanalyse, which sounds like wind chimes on some dust-blown alien planet, is like a memory of a Cold War science fiction that never quite happened. What stops this being a dry exercise or a disparate melange is the inescapable sense of anonymous sadness which pervades the whole record. This same sense of depersonalized tragedy hung over Alphabet 1968, the 2010 album by Black to Calm, aka Mark Richter, the man behind the death ambient genre and the Hamburg-based Accorder label. Richter mischievously described Alphabet 1968, on which the only human voices are on field recordings at the edge of audibility, as an album off songs. What if we were to take Richter's provocation seriously? What would a song with "How to Singer" be like? What would it be like, that is to say, if objects themselves could sing? It's a question that connects fairy tales with cybernetics, and listening to Alphabet 1968, I'm fittingly reminded of a filmic space in which magic and mechanism meet, J.F. Sebastian's apartment in Blade Runner. The tracks on the album are crafted with the same minute attention to detail that the genetic designer and toymaker Sebastian brought to his plaintive automata, with their bizarre mixture of the clockwork and the computerized, the antique and the ultramodern, the playful and the sinister. Richter's pieces have been built from similarly heterogeneous materials: record crackle, shortwave radio, glockenspiels, all manner of samples, mostly of acoustic instruments. Except on Void - a steampunk John Carpenter-like track with susurrating voices conspiring in the background, the music does not feel very electronic. As with Sebastian's talking machines, You get the impression that Richter has used the latest technology in order to create the illusion of archaism. This is a record in which you feel that you can smell the dust coming off the retrieved objects. But so intricately are these sonic palimpsests layered that it's impossible to determine what Richter and his collaborators have played and what has been conjured from the archives. The sounds are treated, reversed and slowed down in a way that makes their original sources mysterious. There is a sense of subtle but constant movement, of sound shadows flitting in and out of earshot. Richter so successfully effaces himself as author that it is as if he has snuck into a room and recorded objects as they played, too, themselves. On the opening track, Jonathan, Crackle, a field recording of drizzle and cutaways to white noise set the scene for a pensive piano. Children's voices can be heard in the distance, and it is like we are being ushered out of the human world into the mysterious world of objects amongst themselves, a world just adjacent to ours, yet utterly foreign to it. It is as if Richter has attuned himself to the subterranean raptures and sadnesses of objects in unoccupied rooms, and it is these songs that he hears. It's not for nothing that the theme of objects coming to life was taken up so often in cinema animation, for, as its name suggests, what is animation if not a version of this process? And most of the tracks on Alphabet 1968 could be tunes for cartoon sequences. The song an object sings as it stirs itself into motion, or declines back into inertia. In fact, the impression of things winding down is persistent on Alphabet 1968. Richter has made an enchanted sound world, but one from which entropy has not been excluded. It feels as if the magic is always about to wear off, that the enchanted objects will slip back into the inanimate again at any moment, an effect which only heightens the track's poignancy. The laboring, looped double bass on Rauschen has all the mechano-melancholy of a phonograph winding down, or perhaps of one of Sebastian's automata running out of power. On trompettes, reverbed wind chimes create a gentle Narnian snowfall. As so often on this album, the track recalls a running down music box. One parallel might be Colleen's 2006 album Boîte à Musique, except that, where Colleen restricted herself to actually using music boxes, Richter loops and sequences his sonic material so that it simulates clockwork. But it's an uncanny clockwork, running to a crooked time. On Amateur Dash with its hints of artificial respiration, as if the walls themselves are breathing, the piano loop seems bent out of shape. Entropy is everywhere in the work of Position Normal, an act whom Simon Reynolds once called the godfathers of hauntology, but it is a very English kind of entropy. In Position Normal's music, it is like London has finally succumbed to the entropy that always threatens to engulf the city in Michael Moorcock's Jerry Cornelius mythos. Except there's something attractive about the deep daydreamy lassitude that reigns here. Entropy isn't a threat so much as a lysergic promise, a chance to uncoil, unwind, unspool. Gradually, you are made to forget all of your urgencies as your brain is lulled and lured into the sunny Sunday afternoon when all Position Normal tunes seem to take place. The allure of this indolent London was touched upon by a certain trajectory in 60s rock, the sunny days of the Kinks' sunny afternoon, the Small Faces' lazy Sunday afternoon, the Beatles' Tomorrow Never Knows and I'm Only Sleeping. Yet this particular strand of Anglo-languor didn't originate here, in the acid and weed reveries of rockers in repose. You can look even further back for antecedents, to moments in Great Expectations, the airless, inertial stasis of Satie's house, or to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, especially well captured in the hookah hazes and fugues of Jonathan Miller's 1968 BBC television version. Position Normal's London is a city far distant from the corporate gloss of busy/business London as it is from the tourist London of pageantry. The tour guide for this anachronistic city would be the James Mason in the London That Nobody Knows, the 1969 film directed by Norman Cohen and based on the book by Geoffrey Fletcher. It's a palimpsest city, a space where many times are layered. Sometimes, when you walk down an unfamiliar street, you might stumble into aspects of it. Street markets that you'd imagined had closed long ago, shops that, so you think, couldn't possibly survive into the 21st century, ripe old voices fit only for the Victorian Music Hall. Position Normal's tracks are Dadaist dub-doodles, disarming in their seeming slightness. They feel like skits or sketches. Unwilling to be seen taking themselves too seriously, but at the same time entirely lacking in knowing smirks. There's a daydreamy quality to the way the music is constructed, ideas waft in but trail off inconclusively while still half-baked. It can be frustrating, at least initially, yet the effect is accretive and seductive. A Position Normal album comes off like an Anglo-fantasia scavenged out of charity shops, all the detritus of the English 20th century made to sing. For the most part, you are left to guess the sources of all the funny voices. Who are they, this cheery gang? Children's radio presenters, comedians, character actors, light entertainers, newsreel announcers, jazz trumpeters, mutes always at the ready, ragpickers, costermongers, chancers, idlers, thespians gone to seed, frothy coffee cafe proprietors. And where have they come from? Scratchy old shellac, unmarked tapes, soundtrack LPs. The tracks bleed into one another, and so do the albums, like failing memories. It turns out that decaying memory is at the heart of Position Normal's music. In an interview with Joachim Norling for Friendly Noise magazine, Position Normal's Chris Bailiff has said that the roots of the PN sound lay in his father's Alzheimer's disease. My dad went into hospital and had to sell the family home. I had to move out, and whilst doing this I found so many old records of his and records that he bought for me. Nursery rhymes, documentaries and jazz. I didn't want to throw anything away, so took them with me. I started to listen to all of them and recorded onto tape my favorite sounds and made incredibly varied mixtapes. I then edited them down until there were what I suppose are called samples. It's as if Bailiff was simultaneously attempting to simulate Alzheimer's and counteract it. Position Normal can be fitted into the venerable English tradition of nonsense. Another small faces parallel, Stanley Unwin provided some of his trademark gobbledygook for Ogden's Nut Gonflake, the album which included Lazy Sunday Afternoon. This same sense of lyrical dementia is at work on Mordant Music's 2006 masterpiece Dead Air. Mordant explicitly affirmed decay and deliquescence as productive processes, and on Dead Air it is as if the mold growing on the archives is the creative force behind the sound. The album sounds like an electro/rave version of the Disintegration Loops, except what was disintegrating here was a moment in British broadcasting history. The loose concept behind the album was a dead television studio, and what's crucial to its unnerving allure is the presence of former Thames TV continuity announcer Philip Elsmore. There's a lunatic calm about the way that Elsmore reading Baron Mordant's nonsense, best heard in its own right on his collaboration with Echoplex, Mplex. Listening to Dead Air is like stumbling into an abandoned museum 200 years into the future where old rave tracks play on an endless loop, degrading, becoming more contaminated with each repetition, or like being stranded in deep space, picking up fading radio signals from a far distant Earth to which you will never return, or like memory itself reimagined as an oniric television studio, where fondly recalled continuity announcers, drifting in and out of audibility, narrate your nightmares in reassuring tones.